When you stop being everywhere for everyone, the world shifts. The phone grows quieter, but your soul hums louder. Those who took your light for granted stumble in its absence. You learn that solitude isn't loneliness, it's power. Your boundaries become wings, and suddenly, peace calls you by name. Boundaries birth respect. The moment you learn to draw that invisible line between yourself and the world, life begins to transform. You realize that respect isn't demanded through words. It's cultivated through self-awareness, consistency, and the quiet courage to say no. Many of us spend years giving pieces of ourselves away in the name of love, loyalty, or kindness, believing that availability equals value. But constant availability drains the soul. It teaches others that our time, energy, and emotions are open for consumption, like an endless well. When you finally begin to set boundaries, you stop bleeding yourself dry for people who never bring water to your well. A boundary is not a wall, it is a gate. Walls keep love out, but boundaries teach love how to enter. When you tell someone what you can and cannot accept, you are not rejecting them. You are honoring yourself. You are saying, "This is the space where I grow, and I invite you to meet me there respectfully." The people who truly care will adjust, while those who benefited from your lack of limits will call you difficult, cold, or selfish. But don't mistake their discomfort for truth. It is merely the sound of control slipping through their fingers. Respect begins with self-respect. You cannot teach others to value what you yourself neglect. When you respect your own time, others learn to do the same. When you no longer tolerate emotional chaos, people either rise to meet your peace or fall away into their own noise. Boundaries filter your life. They sift the sand from the gold. Suddenly, you are surrounded not by everyone, but by the right ones, the ones who see your no not as rejection, but as evidence of integrity. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of clarity. It tells the world who you are and what you stand for. It teaches that love has structure, that kindness has depth, and that respect cannot exist where boundaries are absent. People may test those boundaries, and sometimes even you will question them. You will wonder if you are being too harsh, too distant, too protective of your own space. But remember this: peace is never born from guilt. It is born from alignment. When your heart and your actions finally agree on what you deserve, when you stop saying yes to every request, something powerful happens inside you. The fog begins to lift. You start to hear your own voice again, the one drowned out by obligation and overextension. You realize that your time is sacred, that your energy is a form of currency, and that not everyone has earned the right to spend it. You start choosing your presence instead of scattering it. You learn that love given freely is beautiful, but love given wisely is divine. People often mistake kindness for weakness, but real kindness is not blind generosity. It is generosity guided by wisdom. To set a boundary is to trust that you are worth protecting. It is to understand that saying no to others often means saying yes to your own growth. Boundaries do not push people away. They invite the right ones closer. Those who stay learn to meet you in honesty, not expectation. They learn to value your presence because it is no longer guaranteed. In time, you notice how everything shifts. Conversations grow deeper. Relationships feel lighter. You move with intention, not exhaustion. The world begins to mirror your newfound respect, reflecting it back in opportunities, peace, and authenticity. It all begins when you decide to stop overextending yourself, when you choose to honor your own limits as sacred. Boundaries do not take away your compassion, they give it structure. They are the quiet architects of dignity, teaching others how to treat you and teaching you how to love yourself with grace. Silence speaks louder than constant presence. There comes a moment when words no longer carry the weight they once did, when showing up again and again for people who never truly see you becomes an echo in an empty room. In that moment, silence becomes your most powerful language. It is not the silence of surrender or bitterness, but the silence of wisdom, the understanding that peace does not need to announce itself. You learn that your absence can speak truths your presence could never express. Constant presence often breeds familiarity, and familiarity, when unbalanced, breeds disregard. When you are always available, your voice becomes background noise, your kindness taken as a given, your efforts unnoticed. People begin to assume that you will always be there, waiting, ready to soothe, to listen, to help. But when you step back, when your voice no longer fills the space, you create room for reflection. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing others to see the void left behind. It teaches them to listen, to value, and to remember that your presence was never owed, but offered. There is strength in quiet withdrawal. Not every truth needs to be shouted. Not every hurt needs to be explained. Sometimes the most eloquent response to disrespect, neglect, or misunderstanding is silence. It is a boundary drawn in stillness. It tells the world, I am no longer available for chaos. I choose peace. That kind of silence is not empty. It is full of meaning. It vibrates with self-respect and restraint. It carries the power of restraint in a world that glorifies noise. In silence, you begin to hear what the noise had hidden. Your own heartbeat, your intuition, the soft wisdom that has always lived within you. When you stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you, when you stop performing for those who never applauded, you reclaim your energy. Silence becomes a sanctuary where you return to yourself. It teaches you that not every action requires an audience, and not every presence requires validation. Sometimes silence speaks gratitude, other times it speaks disappointment. It can whisper forgiveness or thunder with finality. Its message changes with intention, but its essence remains the same. It demands awareness. Those who are attuned to your spirit will hear its message clearly. Those who never valued your voice will simply hear nothing at all. That too is a message. There is also healing in silence. The quiet moments between heartbreak and acceptance, between chaos and clarity, are where transformation takes root. When you no longer feel the need to fill every space with noise, you allow yourself to breathe. You begin to see that silence is not loneliness, it is presence. It is the space where your soul exhales. In a world that never stops talking, silence becomes an act of rebellion. It unsettles those who thrive on control and chaos. It exposes truths that words often cover. When you choose to withdraw your voice, it forces others to reckon with their own. It makes them question why the room suddenly feels colder, why the laughter sounds forced, why the energy has shifted. They begin to realize that your constant presence was not guaranteed. It was grace. You do not have to argue for your worth. You do not have to beg to be heard. The quiet dignity of your silence will do the talking. It will say, I have given enough, I have spoken enough, now I choose peace. In time, people will come to understand the language of your silence. They will hear what your stillness means, that your energy is no longer freely spent, that your spirit no longer bends to fit where it does not belong. Silence has a gravity that words cannot match. It gathers strength in its restraint and dignity in its patience. It speaks of endurance, of boundaries, of grace held tightly in the hands of someone who finally understands their worth. When you stop filling every silence with explanations, you begin to live from truth rather than reaction. And in that quiet, the world learns to listen. Self-respect begins where people-pleasing ends. The moment you stop bending yourself into shapes that please others, you start to recognize the sacred outline of who you truly are. People-pleasing is a slow erosion of the self. It teaches you to seek worth in the eyes of others, to measure your value by their comfort, and to silence your truth for their approval. But self-respect, the quiet, unwavering knowing of your own worth, can only grow when you decide to stop living as a reflection of everyone else's expectations. Many of us learn early that love must be earned, that kindness guarantees belonging, and that saying yes keeps the peace. We are taught that to be accepted, we must be agreeable, accommodating, and endlessly available. So we smile when we are tired, we apologize for existing, and we stretch ourselves until we no longer recognize our own reflection. People-pleasing feels like love, but it is not love, it is fear. It is the fear of rejection disguised as kindness, the fear of being unseen, hidden beneath constant approval. The tragedy is that while you are busy pleasing everyone else, you quietly abandon yourself. Self-respect begins with one simple act: choosing yourself. It begins the moment you say, "I will not betray my peace to make others comfortable." It is the understanding that your worth is not a negotiation. You do not have to earn love by shrinking yourself. You do not have to prove your goodness by saying yes when your soul is begging for rest. Self-respect is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is knowing that you deserve the same care and honesty you so freely give to others. When you stop people-pleasing, the world will not applaud. Some will call you selfish. Some will turn away, offended by the audacity of your boundaries. But those reactions reveal what your pleasing once concealed: the truth that their affection was conditional, dependent on your compliance. When you choose self-respect, you may lose company, but you gain freedom. You may stand alone for a while, but you stand tall. You realize that it is better to walk in solitude with integrity than to sit surrounded by those who only love your silence. Self-respect invites honesty into your relationships. It teaches you to speak your truth without apology and to listen without surrendering your own voice. You begin to say no, not as an act of defiance, but as an act of preservation. You learn that no is not rejection, it is redirection toward peace. The more you honor yourself, the more your world transforms. The friendships that survive your boundaries are real. The ones that fade were never rooted in mutual respect. People-pleasing comes from the hunger to be seen, but self-respect comes from finally seeing yourself. It is the difference between asking, "Do they like me?" and knowing, "I like who I am." You no longer chase validation, you embody it. You start to move differently, slower, steadier, grounded in truth. The same energy you once spent managing others' emotions becomes fuel for your own growth. You find joy in authenticity and peace in honesty. There is a power that rises in you when you no longer perform for acceptance. You begin to attract relationships built on mutual regard, not dependency. You no longer confuse love with sacrifice or kindness with submission. You understand that true connection thrives only when both souls stand in their own fullness. When you respect yourself, you teach others how to treat you, not through demands, but through example. The end of people-pleasing is not the end of kindness. It is the beginning of real compassion, compassion that includes you. It is choosing to love yourself enough to disappoint others when necessary, to honor your truth even when it shakes the room. In that courage, self-respect blooms. It does not need applause, permission, or approval. It simply stands, rooted and radiant, whispering the most liberating truth. You are enough, exactly as you are. Absence teaches appreciation. There are lessons that only distance can teach, truths that only silence can reveal, and gratitude that only separation can awaken. When something or someone is always present, always within reach, we begin to take it for granted. We forget its weight, its warmth, its worth. But when that presence is gone, even for a moment, the emptiness it leaves behind becomes a mirror. It reflects all the small blessings we once overlooked, all the quiet moments we let slip by without noticing their beauty. Absence sharpens the senses. It slows time and turns our attention inward. What once felt ordinary suddenly glows with significance. The sound of a familiar laugh, the comfort of a daily routine, the simplicity of shared silence, all of it becomes precious when it's no longer there. We begin to see that appreciation does not truly bloom in abundance, it blooms in scarcity. It is the contrast between presence and absence that gives life its texture, its ache, its depth. Human nature resists stillness. We crave continuity, predictability, the reassurance that the people and things we love will always remain. But life, in its wisdom, knows we grow through loss. It knows that comfort dulls the heart and that gratitude requires contrast. Absence teaches what abundance cannot, that nothing is promised and every moment deserves reverence. It teaches that love cannot be sustained by possession, only by presence that is chosen, not assumed. When you step away from something or someone, even temporarily, perspective begins to unfold. The fog of familiarity lifts, and you see with new eyes. You begin to understand the value of what once seemed small. The relationship you thought would survive without effort suddenly demands reflection. The routine you once complained about now feels like a privilege you miss. Absence has a way of rearranging priorities, of humbling the heart, of bringing clarity where noise once lived. There is also a quiet grace in being the one who withdraws. Sometimes you have to remove yourself, not to punish, but to preserve. Distance creates space for both sides to breathe, to see what remains when constant presence no longer fills the air. It teaches others the weight of your energy, the steadiness of your love, and the emptiness your absence leaves behind. You begin to realize that being missed is not about ego, it is about recognition. It means that what you brought into the world had meaning, that your light touched someone deeply enough to be felt when it's gone. Absence can also be a kind of teacher that softens arrogance. It humbles those who assumed your presence was permanent. It exposes carelessness and awakens sincerity. When you stop showing up automatically, the world begins to pay attention. People start to listen differently, speak differently, act differently. They begin to earn what they once expected. And you too begin to appreciate yourself more, to value your giving, your time, your presence as the gifts they truly are. In the quiet spaces absence creates, growth happens. Reflection takes root. You learn that love does not disappear when presence fades. It deepens, reshapes, and refines itself. Absence can either break connection or make it stronger depending on how it's met. Those who truly value you will bridge the distance with understanding, while others will let silence stretch until it becomes truth. Both outcomes reveal what words never could. Absence is not just the space between moments, it is the sculptor of meaning. It teaches that nothing beautiful should ever be assumed, that the most valuable things in life require awareness to stay alive. It reminds us to hold gently what we cherish, to say thank you more often, to notice the warmth before it turns cold. In every goodbye, even the temporary kind, there is a quiet invitation to love better, to see clearer, to live with deeper gratitude. Peace often arrives when noise leaves. Not the noise of the world alone, but the noise within, the constant chatter of worries, the echo of old wounds, the endless need to be everything for everyone. We live surrounded by noise, both heard and unseen. It hums in our devices, in our timelines, in our relationships, in the thoughts that refuse to rest. For so long, we mistake that noise for life, for purpose, for movement. But real living begins only when the noise fades and peace, soft, patient, and clear, steps forward to take its place. The world teaches us to chase after sound. We equate busyness with success, attention with worth, and silence with emptiness. We fill our days with conversations that don't nourish us and commitments that drain us, terrified of what might rise in the stillness. But when you finally choose quiet over chaos, something shifts. You begin to hear the truth beneath the noise, the truth that peace was never gone, only drowned out. It was waiting, steady and unbothered, beneath the surface of all that clamor. Peace does not enter with fanfare. It does not demand to be noticed. It comes gently, like dawn through a half-open curtain. It comes when you stop explaining yourself to those determined to misunderstand, when you stop chasing answers in the noise of other people's opinions. It arrives when you finally understand that silence is not a void. It is a space for clarity to grow. You start to breathe differently. The same air that once felt heavy now feels sacred. The same moments that once rushed by now ask you to linger. When the noise leaves, you notice things that were always there but hidden. The way sunlight rests on a quiet morning, the sound of your own laughter when it's real, the small, steady rhythm of your heart reminding you that you are still here, still whole, even after the storm. Peace does not erase pain, it softens it. It does not erase memories, it reframes them. It teaches you to look at your scars not as failures, but as proof of survival. Letting go of noise is not easy. Sometimes noise disguises itself as comfort. The people who drain you call it love. The habits that exhaust you masquerade as duty. The overthinking feels like preparation. Yet when you strip all of that away, when you choose to walk away from what no longer feeds your spirit, peace starts to fill the spaces that chaos once occupied. It doesn't come all at once. It comes in moments, in pauses, in deep breaths, in quiet realizations that not everything needs a reaction. Peace is not about perfection or control. It is about release. It is the understanding that some battles are won by walking away, some questions are answered by silence, and some healing requires nothing more than stillness. When you stop forcing, stop explaining, stop absorbing every vibration of the world, peace slips in quietly, almost unnoticed, and wraps itself around you. The absence of noise teaches you the language of simplicity. You no longer need constant validation or endless distractions. You become content with the basics: truth, time, breath, presence. You start to value the quiet moments that once scared you, realizing that peace is not boring, it is beautiful. It is where your thoughts slow enough for gratitude to bloom, where your heart steadies enough to listen to what it really needs. When noise leaves, the soul remembers its rhythm. It stops running, it rests. And in that rest, everything real begins to grow again: clarity, balance, love, and strength. Peace is not something you chase. It is something that arrives when you stop entertaining what disturbs it. The noise will always call, but peace, once found, teaches you to listen differently, to the world, to others, and most of all, to yourself. Growth demands selective availability. There comes a time in every life when you realize that not everyone, not everything deserves your constant access. The person you are becoming cannot coexist with the distractions that once entertained you. Growth requires pruning, quietly, steadily, and sometimes painfully. It asks you to step back from certain conversations, certain habits, certain people, so that you can step fully into yourself. You begin to understand that your time, your energy, your attention, these are sacred currencies, and not everyone should have the privilege of spending them. When you are available to everything, you are devoted to nothing. Your energy scatters, your focus weakens, and your purpose becomes diluted by the noise of too many demands. But when you choose to become selective, when you decide who and what gets access to your heart, your time, your presence, you start to grow in clarity and strength. This is not selfishness. It is self-respect in motion. You are not withdrawing from the world. You are aligning with what truly matters. Growth is not loud. It does not announce itself with fireworks or applause. It happens in the quiet spaces where you learn to say no without guilt, where you prioritize rest over reaction, and where you choose depth over distraction. Selective availability means recognizing that you cannot pour into every cup without emptying your own. It means understanding that your growth requires stillness as much as action,